Welcome back to another edition of the Hot Minutia. I am Barry Long the second, not the first, not the third. We are live on CoachellaValley.com. We are live on today'scalifornia.com, live on today'scanada.com. We are live all over the Twitterverse, all over the metaverse, all over the universe. You name it, we are there. We appreciate everybody for commenting in. This is a sports show called the Hot Minutia. If you don't know, the Hot Minutia, basically minutia means the smallest minute details. And who better than to break it down than my main man, my co-host, Rudy Reyes. What's going on, boss?
What's going on, man? You know, a lot of stuff going on. The sports is just out of control right now, and that's in a good way. I mean that in the best way possible. We've seen tons of Game 7s. We're going to jump in and talk about some NBA action, of course. We're going to talk about the NHL playoffs just a little bit, and then we're also going to sprinkle in some shade on those who like to cast the shade but don't like to receive the shade. And I'm not talking about a sunbather on the beach. We're talking about NBA-style shade, which can get out of control quick.
Yeah, absolutely. We already got a comment from Billiams. I said Billiam and then Will. Bill Senso, a.k.a. William Senso, one of our favorite viewers. And Maria Lascuna. She said, I miss hearing you guys. Welcome back. We are back. We are in full effect. And like Rudy mentioned, we got to talk some NBA. Now, the best two words in all of sports are Game 7. And we thought that we might see multiple Game 7s this playoffs round. But we did. We actually saw two Game 7s. That went down to the wire, and it was exciting to see whether or not we were going to see the Celtics versus the Bucks, who was going to come out of that series. A lot of people were saying they were going to win the East, and whoever came out of the series between the Mavs and the Suns being up 3-2. We know what that team did last year. We know what they did during the regular season, and they completely disappointed. At one point, they were down by more point. They were down by just as many points as Luka Doncic had points. They had 27. He had 27 at the half. So, and Mike Capone, shout out to him. He has been a staunch and stout protector of the Celtics, and he has always been saying that Celtics were going to win this series, and they did. So we're going to break down both those series. We're also going to talk a little bit of Antonio Brown. This is your guy, Rudy Reyes. This is your guy.
He ain't my guy. He ain't my guy. He is not my guy. I can tell you that right now. Yeah. He's somebody else's guy. He's an unsigned guy. I can tell you that.
And he was talking about going to the Ravens. Now he's talking about he wants to retire with the Steelers. So we might see Kenny Pickett throwing at him. Who knows? We'll talk about that. We'll break it down. But first of all, let's just jump right into the game that's most freshest on our brains, and that was the Suns versus the Dallas Mavericks. And the Dallas Mavericks basically got hot. They were hitting three after three after three. You saw Luka Doncic really step up and become a leader. Like, he's always been the best player on the Mavericks since he stepped on that court. But he became a leader this year, this team. And we saw him, take criticism from Jason Kidd after Game 2 when he didn't perform well defensively. Jason Kidd went out there and said, hey, and challenged him. Jason Kidd has also challenged his other role players. And we saw him go after, Jalen Brunson and other players. And we saw him put together a defensive game plan that looked so brilliant yesterday. It was magnificent. The way that they double-teamed Devin Booker, the way that they went after Chris Paul when he was on defense. Everybody knows that Chris Paul has lost a step or two on defense. He used to be one of the best defensive point guards in the league, but now he's getting old and not looking that great. And they attacked him. They also had, Luka Doncic going and attacking, doing the switching off and getting switched on to Ayton, who cannot stick with him. Luka could drive by you if he really needs to, although his game is not predicated off athleticism. But his best attribute is his step back and his Euro step and his ability to put shots up in awkward positions and concoct his body in such a way that the defense can't stop him. And when he's hitting threes the way he was hitting threes, and when you have Spencer Dinwiddie dropping points the way he was dropping points, and Jalen Brunson, I mean, it was really pick your poison last night. And on the flip side, the defense was just suffocating. And I mean, you had the big three, who everybody's been calling the big three. That's Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and Chris Paul. Chris Paul had 10 points and 4 assists. DeAndre Ayton had 5 points. Devin Booker had 11 points. The leading scorer for the Phoenix Suns was Cam Johnson, and he barely even played last year. I mean, he's a role player. He can knock down threes, and we saw what he can do at UNC. But if he's going to be your leading scorer, you're not going to win at all. and you're going to lose by 33 the way they did last night. So it was definitely a disappointing performance for all Phoenix Suns fans out there. And I'm not sure whether or not this is the end of the road for that team, because that window is closing with Chris Paul every single year that he gets older. And he hasn't performed well since he turned 37 after game 2. So we don't know what the future is, but we definitely know that the future is bright in Dallas.
Well, the future is bright in Dallas because Luka Doncic. That's why. Now, you cannot like his on-court banter. You cannot like his on-court verbiage after certain plays and calls that aren't frankly made. But what you can count on is his ability to get and drive inside the lane, be the willing passer, being the guy who's your leading scorer. He did it at halftime. Not that he's going to get that opportunity to do that against Golden State coming up here tomorrow, in fact, but rest assured, this is not something that is going to be let go by none other than the Phoenix Suns. When you look at the lackluster, not only defensive effort, but the rotation of personnel, the inability for CP3, as you know, he's 0-2 in the playoffs and has ultimately led his team down the wrong path on quite a few occasions. He needed to show up when he needed to show up. He pulled a James Harden, or better yet, James Harden pulled CP3. Either way, both of these guys were a no-show when it came to playoff contention and playoff action. CP3 was a guy who, you thought was going to do some relatively good things, 10 points, 4 for 8, 1 rebound, 4 assists. It's not as if he was lighting up the boards and did nothing in the way of helping his team win whatsoever. And you mentioned it when it came to Cameron Johnson, who can't be your leading scorer. There's absolutely no way. These guys were not playing their top game at all. And it wouldn't surprise me at all whatsoever to see CP3 heading out of Phoenix because he's not the catalyst anymore. He's a guy who's on the outside looking in. He didn't do very good. And the wrong graphic, as we have on the screen, makes it look as though Milwaukee's still in. Of course, we know they're not. But when you look at the Phoenix Suns, it's as if they just disappear. They weren't there.
Yeah.
30 for 67 for field goal, from the field rather, and only had like 39 rebounds and 15 offensive, rebounds. So again, the Suns were outplayed, outcoached, and of course their coach, Monty Williams, coach of the year.
Yeah.
How did that happen? When you look at in his first year as a Mavs full-fledged head coach, going in and basically outschooling a guy in Monty Williams, who also has some NBA lineage as well himself, certainly didn't put his team in the best position. But again, he's not on the floor. He can't run all the positions. He assigned these guys for a reason. And it would not blame me. I would not blame him whatsoever if he decided to cut CP3 loose, just like in James Harden. I expected to sign a huge contract in the offseason. But let's talk more about what the Mavs did versus what the Suns didn't do, right? So Luka Doncic, 35 points, 12 for 19, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. Dinwiddie, 30 points. Brunson, 24. Now, look, Brunson's on his way. He's an up-and-comer. Nobody needs to cast shade at this guy whatsoever. And, of course, Powell, 6 points, 3 for 3, 5 from Finney-Smith. Look, these guys are up and rising. Now, here's the best part about the Mavs win. I called this win before it actually ever happened.
You did?
I did. And the best part about this is that the Stars, unfortunately, were defeated yesterday. They lost a game. They're going to a game 7, so we don't know who's going to go. This is a Mavs win last night, but the Stars have to get it done tomorrow night. So we're going to see which star shines the brightest there in Dallas. Is it going to be the Mavs or is it going to be the Stars? We're going to find out.
Absolutely.
But when you look at the Mavs, they did it without any major stars on their roster. And Dinwiddie is, again, another up-and-comer. Luka Doncic, love him or hate him, he's the guy who's going to lead you down the way and in the future.
Yeah, and Sage Alvarez, shout out to Sage. He commented earlier, he said, Barry would have coached with those shades, Suns would have won. For sure, man. You know what? It's just the Suns, they did not look good from the start. And the Mavericks, like you said, to your point, they've just played well and outplayed their opponents this postseason. Thoroughly outcoached was Monty Williams by Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd showed us that he can make adjustments during the series, mid-series, and they did, and they applied these defensive tactics against the Phoenix Suns, neutralized them, and basically showed us a blueprint of how you destroy them and tear them apart. And this was one of the key memes that was around today going around. And we will have our meme of the day. Don't forget to tune in for the meme of the day. We are live on CoachellaValley.com. Today's California and today's Canada. All right, so this is the halftime score, bro. And at this halftime, you're looking at Luka Doncic has 27 points, and the Phoenix Suns have 27 points. So he literally was tied with the entire team. And you're up by 30. I mean, that 27 points in one quarter is average in the NBA. To have it in 2 quarters, and as long as they had it extended to the third quarter, it was just ridiculous. But it's hats off to what Jason Kidd was able to do defensively, and just hats off to the execution by those players on the Mavericks. And you're right. They have one superstar in Luka. That's it. If you can get, all he needed was a little bit of help. He got a little bit of help from Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Brunson, and I mean Powell and Finney Smith. Those guys are going to do what they do. They're going to be the role players. But last year when they lost Rick Carlisle as the head coach, and they lost Tim Hardaway Jr., who was a scoring option, you thought, man, they have no chance. And even when you saw them matching up against the Phoenix Suns, you're like, man, they have no chance. And all they did was prove us all wrong. And I would not be surprised if Luka had it in him to pull it out against the Warriors. But I just don't see that happening. And we will discuss that here shortly. But let's
not at all. I want to talk about one more thing about Chris Paul. Historically, in this series, in Game 3, he had 12 points, 5 for 9, 7. He was 5 for 24 in Game 4, 7 points, 3 for 8 in Game 5, 13, 4 for 7, Game 7, 10, 4 out of 8. Now, here's the problem with that picture. It's a carousel.
Yeah.
It's not a welcome carousel, but it's more like a roller coaster for me, and I don't like roller coasters.
So are you done with Chris Paul in Phoenix?
Yes.
I say you keep him. I say you bring him back one more year. Let his leadership.
No. He does not deserve a championship ring. There is no participation for losing a game when you have a carousel series like this. And in his career, that's exactly what's transpired. When you look at his body of work, yeah, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't make any joke about that whatsoever. But he has a record 5 blown 2-0 series leads, and does he deserve a ring? Absolutely not. Maybe a Fruit Loop ring, or maybe something get out of the clock. But at the end of the day, Patrick Beverley casts some serious shade. He says, "Why do you mean? What do you mean deserve? Why does he deserve it more?" And that's actually a really fair question. Nobody deserves a ring. Nobody deserves $1 million. You have to go out and earn it. And both of those could be a lot more elusive for Chris Paul at this point in his career than not at all.
And let's keep in mind that he is 0-6 in his last 6 Game 7s. So 0-6, the last 6 Game 7s is not good. And you got to be able to get it done in Game 7. I mean, you extend a series to Game 7 on your home floor. You got to be able to get it done. And it was just terrible. Now, a team that was able to get it done on their home floor was the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics came out playing well. They just looked like they knew what they were going to do from the jump. And this series has gone back and forth. And this was probably the most toss-up series that we had this playoff round. And nobody really knew who was gonna show up. And Giannis Antetokounmpo, not having Chris Middleton, really hurt him and really hindered that team. And we saw that yesterday during that Game 7. But the Celtics were just on. I mean, they hit a record 22 3-pointers in franchise history in the Game 7. We know about the historic franchise that the Celtics are, how many Game 7s they've been in. But 22 threes, I mean, they shot 40%. They were just raining from 3-point. And this game particularly, we always see, the Celtics always have Jason Tatum or Marcus Smart going off, or even Jaylen Brown. But this game, Grant Williams out of the University of Tennessee came through with a team-high 27 points, y'all. 27 points. And it was a great victory for them. Just a great performance from him. He did it a lot from 3-point. And we saw Giannis Antetokounmpo struggle mightily down the stretch. The second half, particularly, he looked awful. Although he did finish with 25 points, 9 assists, and 20 rebounds, it was probably the ugliest near triple-double that we've seen thus far ever, because it was just things were just not going well for them. But it's a good team. The Celtics are a good team. They've been good all season long. And, I didn't expect them to blow this team out, but I did expect them to at least win this game with no Chris Middleton? What say you, Rudy Reyes?
Well, I look at this game and I thought to myself, you're not going to win at TD Garden. You're not going to win at TD Garden. That's exactly what happened. Milwaukee went in there. They won on their home floor, the Celtics, and decided to really just punch them right in the mouth. They could not recover from. Reminds me of a Mike Tyson fight when he took a bite out of Holyfield's ear. I mean, they really just stuck it to him. 109-81 in Game 7. And this game wasn't even close. Matter of fact, both Giannis and Jason Tatum had 17 points at the half going into this second half. And my gosh, it was just an offensive onslaught. They got the stops at the opposite end. Defense was all over the place. Celtics, and the NBA in general, and NBA teams haven't really dialed into what defense actually means. But when you look at the Celtics, man, they D'd up every chance they got. And yeah, there were some questionable calls, I must admit, on both sides of the ball. It wasn't just about Milwaukee making unforced errors or the Celtics causing unforced errors. Both of these teams just, were careless with the ball at times. There were some ticky-tack fouls, and then there were some right calls. So, could you say there were makeup calls on the other end? Sure, you could say that. Whether or not it's a reality is another story. I believe that when you look at the Celtics, they are designed and purely designed with defense in mind. And I'm a poet and didn't know it, but they're going to take down the Heat, and they're going to get beat. I mean, the Celtics just look way too good. Yeah, they have Jimmy Butler in Miami, which exited earlier last season and even earlier before that season. But this could be Jimmy Butler's time. I like the hero move. I like the hero step from Hero himself, who obviously coined that phrase. Maybe he should hashtag it and make it his own. But this is going to be a great game between Celtics and the Heat. Unfortunately, I think the Celtics will take this in 6, just like the last listener who's a diehard Celtics fan wants this to happen, and I believe he'll get his wish.
Yeah, and he says Mike Capone is who you shouting out. We are live on CoachellaValley.com, today's California.com, today's Canada.com. We appreciate everybody for tuning in and everybody for commenting on the Hot Minutia, the sports show that is live, coming to you directly Monday through Friday. But Mike Capone, he says Warriors versus Celtics jumping the gun a little. And,
not at all.
I don't think that's jumping the gun either. And we both said that. We thought that early on in the playoffs, based off the defensive performance that we saw the Celtics putting up in the first round, and based off Draymond Green coming back and looking like Draymond Green, and you still got health, you still got Klay Thompson, whether or not he's 100% healthy remains to be seen, but we saw him go off in what was a game 6. So we've seen him go and be Klay before, so we thought that based on the two teams' performances, they were probably the best on each side of the ball. And don't forget, you had Booker hurt with the hamstring injury. So we said Warriors and Celtics early on in the playoffs. It looks like that's what we're going to get. But the team in Miami, they are no pushover. And they've got players. I mean, they've got guys that can go out and get a bucket when you need one. Kyle Lowry, we've seen what he can do. But Jimmy Butler, a guy who probably is the hardest worker in the NBA when it comes to improving his defensive play and his offensive play. He barely couldn't even score. All he could do was defend a little when he first got in the league. Now he can go out and get you a game-winning bucket when you need one. He's come up clutching a lot of times. But you've got guys like Tyler Hero, who you just mentioned, who's developed into a really nice point guard. Wish they had Duncan Robinson right now because that team could be even better. But they've got guys like Victor Oladipo, who we forgot about, who doesn't always light it up on the stat line, but when you're in a critical crunch time situation and you need a game-winning bucket, Oladipo he's not a bad third or fourth option. And we know what Bam Adebayo has been doing this year. So I like the Heat going hard and giving the Celtics a challenge, but I just don't see anybody beating this Celtics defense. And I think that this series goes 7. And I'm sticking to it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, you can stick to it. Shifting out west, let's look at the Mavericks and Golden State matchup. Absolutely. You have Draymond Green. Yeah, no, Klay Thompson's not 100%. That's a guaranteed fact. It's not. But you do have Steph Curry, who loves to cook it up. And we're going to see Steph in these series just be absolutely outstanding. Lights out. Once it released from his hands, other than the charity stripe, will certainly make it strike. Early on, he's missed more three-pointers in this year alone than he has his entire career. Not to suggest that's going to be the game winner or the game breaker, because I don't know what's up with that. I really have no idea why he would be missing so many. I mean, those are like given. I could probably make free throws, maybe not surrounded by 100,000 people, but I can So this is going to be an under pressure game. I'm not going to say the Mavs are going to win this because I don't believe they can. But what I believe is when you look at Luka Doncic, has he become the best player at that point? Probably not. You have other players that are certainly ahead of him in Giannis, Joel Embiid. These guys are scorers. Giannis is Jokic as well. You know, of course, he won the NBA MVP. So clearly he can do it all with less. I mean, he did win it, but did he deserve to win it? And will Steph Curry deserve to win a finals MVP if in fact it goes that direction? That remains to be seen. Lots of basketball to be played yet. But I just don't believe the Mavs have enough between Dinwiddie and Luka Doncic in order to really stick it to the Golden State Warriors, especially not in the Golden State, which is, well, California. So at the end of the day, it's going to be this is going in 4. Golden State.
All right. You're sweeping them?
Yep.
Get out the brooms, because I was going to say the same thing, but I'm going to call it a gentleman's sweep. So maybe you got like a vacuum and I got a broom. So they're still getting swept up out of here, but I feel like they can get one game. And I feel like their best shot is probably going to be game 1, just because it's a fill-out process when you have a series between 2 NBA teams. You know that potentially there's going to be 7 games in this series. This won't be 7 games, by the way. But I do feel like, Golden State has an opportunity to go down and get their butts kicked. We saw what they did to the Grizzlies. After dominating down the stretch for a couple games, they were down by 55 points. I mean, and I know Steve Kerr was out with the protocols. I know that, Mike Brown is no Steve Kerr, and I know that they had an off night shooting, but the Warriors are capable of having an off night or two. So I picked them to win this series in 5 games. And I just think that once it comes down to it, we saw Luka perform beautifully last night for the Game 7. We saw Spencer Dinwiddie, who hasn't really played like that since Brooklyn. Maybe it's been a little bit longer than that. But Spencer Dinwiddie is not going to give you that many points each and every night, especially against that Warriors defense. Jalen Brunson is a guy who's on the rise. I'm not really sure what to say about Jalen Brunson. I don't ever want to discount him out from having a big night. So I think he's an X factor. But ultimately, the Warriors, their defensive mindset, when they have Draymond Green on the floor, and they've got so many weapons. They got Jordan Poole now. But Kuminga can step up and play at a high level. I just think there's way too many guys that operate at a high level. And if one guy's off, that there's going to be somebody else on. Not everybody's going to have a bad night like last night for the Phoenix Suns. So I say the Warriors are capable of losing 1 game in this series, and it'll be a gentleman's sweep.
I have to say a very clean sweep. We're talking a pressure hose. Forget the vacuum. You use a pressure hose and get them right off your pavement real quick, just like removing a weed in between the cracks of your cement driveway. Okay, it's going to be that good because you have a Draymond Green who is a defensive maniac. Steph Curry can drop 3 from half court if he wants to. Klay Thompson certainly getting his feelers out there and becoming the Klay of old. Don't forget, 2 years removed from being in any type of basketball whatsoever, much less a championship run, which it appears to be. I'm not jumping on their bandwagon by any means, because I know any team on any given Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and twice on Sunday can be beat. And there is a game they could very well lose. The problem that I have is that their bench depth is just that. It's deep like a well.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that okay, fine. So they don't have Iggy in there. They don't have Gary Payton II due to a hand and stress fracture in his forearm, and obviously the shock in his elbow. Otto Porter is out, as well as James Wiseman, who would have been an absolutely fantastic
James Wiseman.
You haven't heard anything from James Wiseman because, look, if they're out in front of you, you're going to forget about him, and that goes to every single NBA player, right? We don't talk about the guys who could have, should have, would have been there. We're talking about the guys who are there right now. And now it's Golden State Warriors who just completely made a monkey out of the Memphis Grizzlies. Yes. And I must say that even though you don't have Steve Kerr and you have Mike Brown, I don't think you can take anything away from what he's done. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't take that job in Sacramento. Just saying.
He is Rudy Reyes. I am Barry Long II. We are live on CoachellaValley.com. Today's California.com. Today's Canada.com. This is the Hot Minutia. And yeah, I wouldn't take that job either. I don't know why people keep taking that job in Sacramento. Maybe it's a stepping stone to not. It's not a stepping stone to a better job. It's a stepping stone to getting fired and being an assistant coach somewhere else the next year, because
and deeper in the ocean too while you're at with an anchor on your ankle.
Michael Pone says, great show tonight. And Bill Sisto says, another great show, guys. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.
But we're not done. So just
we're not done.
We're not done. And here's why. NHL playoffs were absolutely fantastic. I called the Stars to win. Well, they lost. Well, we can't all win. We can't all lose. But you have Calgary facing off against the Oilers, Avalanche taking on the St. Louis Blues, Panthers taking on the defending champion Tampa Bay Lightning, and Carolina, the Hurricanes. Of course, that's where Hurricanes usually land, is in Carolina.
Yes, they do.
Who's on the road taking care of the New York Rangers at MSG. So it all boils down to who wants to cut more, who wants it worse. Of course, I see my Penguins lose against New York Rangers with a over the shot left shoulder squeeze by Habibajad. Just a crazy game, insane, intense, all at the same time. Boston just could not hold the firepower that Carolina had down the stretch, and the Toronto Maple Leafs just were awestruck by the Lightning shattering that leaf off the tree. And of course, we know that Washington wasn't able to get it done. Capitals just not able to capitalize there on knocking out the Panthers. So I mean, there's tons of great NHL action. Don't remiss on these NHL playoffs, because they are exciting. And other than the NBA playoffs, there's nothing like it other than the NFL playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is intense. And we had a few game sevens. So if you're out there and you like hockey or any bit, just go out and watch some hockey, watch some playoffs. My Kings are out. They lost in game 7 to the Oilers. Really upset about that. But yeah, we will continue to dive deeper into the storylines as we get deeper and deeper into the Stanley Cup playoffs and get to the Stanley Cup finals. But now, real quick, before we get out of here, Antonio Brown just popped up in the news. He's saying he's been in the news. That's his terrible picture.
I know you love that photo.
Yeah,
you probably curl up to that every night.
But yeah. So
great impression. I don't know if I'm impressed.
But, all right. but yeah, absolutely. He's saying that he wants to retire as a Steeler now. This seems like he's been doing just random things on social media. He put a picture of himself up in a Baltimore Ravens jersey, just insisting or implying that he has some kind of deal being worked out with them, or maybe trying to get them to make a deal, because we know that his cousin was a former player on the Ravens, now on the Cardinals. We might see him post something and saying, hey, Cardinals, come get me. But right now what we're seeing is him basically begging to come back to Pittsburgh, saying, I want to retire as a Steeler. You being the biggest Steelers fan I know, what do you think about that?
It's not going to happen. I mean, this guy basically made a laughing stock out of himself, tried to make a laughing stock out of the organization, and try to use mental health as some type of excuse. And of course, that photo right there is indicative of what mental health actually should not look like.
Yeah.
When you're hopping off the field and, I just had an injection in my knee. Okay, that lasts for 6 hours. Yet you're going to jump off, take your shirt off and your gloves. He's got serious problems. There's no way this organization. Now, okay, fine. So he holds records and, he's electric when he's on the field, yada, yada, yada. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, the Steelers will not entertain this. I can almost say for certain they're not going to bother with this nonsense. And Antonio Brown will stay unsigned, unretired, and without a job, because no team's going to take a chance on someone who has these type of issues that have not been worked out. Talk about demons in the closet.
Yeah, for sure. And we just seen a lot of things going back to his days in Pittsburgh originally. And Mike Tomlin doesn't want to go and revisit that scenario and that conundrum that is Antonio Brown. All right, real quick, we'll get out of here. We got the meme of the day. And meme of the day is, of course, it's got to be something with the Suns, because the Suns, they have just now released their new logo, and their new logo is the Phoenix Suns. Because they were terrible yesterday. And of course, everybody remembers this guy from the Geico commercial or Progressive commercial, whatever it was, where you couldn't get that dollar bill. That's the way Chris Paul is every single year in the playoffs. Shout out to NBA memes _official for those memes. We appreciate it. Now, real quick, Rudy, let them know how they can find you.
Oh, you guys can find me anywhere. You can go to Twitter, my favorite place, at Reyes on there. You can find me just as it's written here, right on the screen. If I can get my finger over in the right way, I guess I can or cannot. There you go. Right there is this cross screen. Rudy Reyes. Getting a little blacked out, but that's me. Find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and anywhere this podcast is heard.
All right. And you guys can find me right there, the way it's written right there, on Facebook, Barry Long space II, or on IG at Barry Long II, or on Twitter at Radio Barry Long. Y'all remember, well, thanks real quick for commenting. Bill Senso, Michael Pone, who both said we had great shows, Sage Alvarez, as well as Maria Lascuna. We appreciate everybody for tuning in, everybody for commenting. And yeah, stay focused, stay motivated, stay inspired, and remember, you're capable of doing anything, so go out and do it. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
Later.